Should be topic number 5 is continued topic of a unified Africa. Yes or no to this model? Why suggest replicating the historical state developments of Europeans when African people already had their own conception of states? Of course, this comes with a link. Looks like it's taking us to Twitter. Takes us to a tweet from Friends of Roberts. It says African countries have to threaten other African countries with annexation, territorial encroachment, regime overthrow, etc., so that African governments will work harder to make sure they have stable states. Goes on to say, if you look at Europe, much of the advances born there come out of insecurity, fear of external rivals. Nothing similar exists in Black Africa. The French had to invest in and implement new technologies and practices, or else the Germans would end up marching to Paris. He says, imagine if Nigeria had the real existential threat next door. They wouldn't tolerate corruption and incompetence within their society the way they do. There's too much quote unquote chop life mentality in Africa. There needs to be more winner takes all competition. Baka Umubu, I think the brother used to follow me before. He says, you might be right. So, with that said, Carl Hezekiah, what are your thoughts on this on these tweets as it relates to uh, this prompt?
I think um, I think one of the greatest things that we lost in in our condition throughout our history is our imagination. You know, we can't imagine things outside of a closed box. We only have a limited amount of things to draw from. We have European history, so you have the German states fighting with the other German states. You know, and that's how they did it. So we should do the same thing. I don't want Africa. I don't want the African continent to replicate what happened in German unification because Germany was not a one whole nation until relatively recently in history. There were many different German principalities and kingdoms and whatnot until they got all united under the Prussians. So I don't want to see Africa duplicate what Europe did. I don't want to see things like the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War going on in Africa like it did in Europe. I think that we're better than that. I think we should not look to Urugu and their disease mentality and want to replicate what they did. Um, I think that there is a need for African unification, but should it be based on conquest? I mean, any conquered people it is basically a rebellious people. Eventually, they're going to rise up against you. You know, oppression breeds rebellion. So I don't think that duplicating what these crackers did in their history is something that we should try to replicate. Because even though we like to think of Europeans are not unified. They're not organized. They'll kill each other at the drop of a hat. The only thing that they're unified about is oppressing us. But we just see right now what's going on with the European Union, how it's falling apart. Um, we see that what's going on as far as with Ukraine and everything else like that. So what the external pressures that Europe that's their own thing. Their climate and their culture shape their mentality, and we don't need that. We need something superior to that in my system, in my opinion. So yeah, it's and I think we already have the external pressures that is going on to cause that because if we look at what's going on in the world today, African people are already oppressed. We're already having our resources stolen, our people being killed. So, what other pressures do you need at this point? So, if an objective person can look at this and they can see, hey, black people are fleeing Africa to get to Europe because they have no opportunities. They're letting the Italians are letting them drown in the Mediterranean. You know, they're being poisoned and gassed and everything else. What other um, external pressures do you need? So, but I'll pass the mic on that. I see the people aren't even talking about this particular topic in the chat. Y'all get it together.
Get it
Tighten up.
together.
Tighten up.
Yeah, tighten up. Get it together.
I,
It's
I
a
want Coco. I want to go. I want to go because there's some things that Carl said that I want to build on,
go
and
ahead.
I don't want to forget it because I'm drinking. Listen, in terms of go back to the question, Coco. Go back to the question.
I thought
On
you
put the
quit drinking, but hold on. Let me.
no, that was last Saturday night. That was last Saturday. No, I ain't going out to that. I ain't drinking wine. I ain't drinking wine. Listen, so this say so this say why suggest replicating a historical state development of Europeans when African people already had their own conception of I guess the state, whatever. So if you look at this, this is what I'm talking about in terms of idealism and ideologues. And this is the problem I have. This is the problem I have when you dealing with the ideologues and idealists. Yes, Africa had their own conception of statehood, but obviously there was a major fault in what they did. A major fault because it was pregnable and the outside was able to come in and infiltrate and destroy that sense of statehood and replace it with the European statehood. It was a pregnable state of affairs. There was a major flaw in what they created because someone could have come in and completely destroy it and disrupt it from the outside and even from within. So if we was to look at something like that and redo the same things we would have done before, what you think is going to happen? A repeat of history is going to happen. No, you look into the world and you take from the best in the world and you try to create a society that is impregnable from the outside and the inside if you want to replace it. Now you could do it in an African way, but it doesn't mean you can't look at other look around the world and find out where society. There's no one I've seen yet as yet going into America and wanted to replace the American system. Say, well, we gonna colonize you all Americans, and we're gonna replace you all as a society. We're gonna put our own culture there. Why? Because they've done things to make their society impregnable. The Chinese didn't do it in the past, but when they rebuilt their societies, rebuilt their societies in such a way that a lot of their societies are impregnable because not only created a mindset within the people themselves, but they created material defenses it will be very difficult for someone from coming in the outside to come in, infiltrate, and replace that system. North Korea doing it. So it's crazy for us to close our eyes and say, well, oh, let's do it. Why reinvent the wheel when the wheel is already then there? When the examples are already then done? Why not use your brain and use the takeaways from the people who have been successful at it around the world? It's not to say I don't want to put a Chinese suit on an African. It's not to say that we can't have our own perspective and ways of going around and going about it. But to go back and just do the same things them people been doing, our people been doing in the 15th, the 14th, and 13th century, what you think is gonna happen? This is the ideas. This is the problem I have with these ideologues, man. You know what I mean? They're not, like the brother was saying, they're not real. They're not living in the real world. They're not living in the current world as it exists. And then they get mad when you see what you see the state of affairs in the black world right now. When the woman wearing big wig and looking like ghosts with bleached faces and shit like that all over the black world because they have been able to infiltrate and do the things that they've been able to do. It's impregnable. It was pregnable. That's how they've been able to do it. And you have to create a state of affairs where your society is impregnable, impregnable, impregnable. So this is like I say, this is the issues I have with ideologues And I can't have long discussions with these brothers because they get off on these fanciful notions and not really speak to the matter at hand today, 2023. You know what I mean? But I'll leave it. I'll leave it. Like it's brother Crary say, leave the rum alone. Even on my wine, I'll just leave it alone.
I appreciate that, Buana. Let's go to Tanzan. Tanzan, what say you? Oh, maybe Tan didn't come back yet. Let's go to Real Black Gentleman. Real Black Gentleman, if you're there, unmute your mic. All right, let's go to Oni. Oni, what say you here?
Go on. All right. Anyway, yeah, about that. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of black folk. That's like the other segment of people who just kind of talk shit are the people who like play Risk. You know what I mean? Shout out to Harsh Reality. Like, we saw this one brother. I had to block this motherfucker, but this dude was like, oh, I'm gonna just buy half of Congo. I'm gonna buy half of the Congo, and then with that, I'm gonna establish it. It's like, shut the fuck up. You're not gonna buy half of the fucking Congo. Like, shut the fuck up. You know, and this is like another of those risk things where it's like, hey man, African countries need to, you know, we need to start fighting among each other. Like, we get what you're saying, but it's 2020 fucking 3. You know what I mean? It's 2020 fucking 3. We didn't do it in the past. Okay? The white man showed up and he was ready to fucking fight. You know, he was ready to, you know, kick ass and take names. Okay? We weren't as ready. That's fine. We can get ready without trying to, you know, fight each other in a sense or encouraging that kind of thing. A lot of it is just kind of like theoretical, you know, but it doesn't. That's the thing I really, you know, that's the thing that I find about people is that a lot of times they do not like it's like what's practical versus what's idealistic, you know? What's practical versus like look at this shit right here. No, it's not 2023, stupid. The Gregorian calendar. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so stupid what people are saying. You know, it's just like, it's like, geez Louise. You know, like how, like, so many people are so disconnected from reality that what passes for intelligent conversation becomes, hey, man, this is, you're following a calendar. Like, shut up. You know, like, it's pretty aggravating. Usually I turn off the chat when I'm talking, so I'm going to do that again. But like that's the issue that we find ourselves in, where people a lot of times talk is where it's at. You know, like I said, you go to Africa, you invest in, I want to say now, like 5 different businesses, bring up several people, you know, have tremendous generosity, show tremendous character. All that kind of stuff, and people who don't, you know, people who don't do anything near, are like, oh, well, I'm better than you because I don't use the calendar. You know, like, shut up, you know, or even like, or people, you know, who don't. Again, they sit around and they talk about how they're going to, you know, pit different African states against each other. Like, it's like that's not. You're not going to do that, you know? And that's really what it comes down to. What are you going to fucking do? You know? I say to myself, look, I want to expand the Swahili language. So you could see I'm working on a Swahili app. I say, I think my son needs a children's book. You could see I publish a children's book. I say African adults need education on regards to the different speeches in the past and so on and so forth. You see, I put together 500 pages that realistically, if it was in a normal size, is 1,000 fucking pages, right? And then people sit down. Oh well, I think Tariq do. Like, shut up, like, guys, are you like, what is the activity that you're trying to accomplish? Because that's what comes to in this prompt. It's like, what is the activity that, like, what is the action that's going to take place? You're not going to pit African states against each other. And it'd be foolish if for you to think, oh yeah, let's pit each other against each other so that we're now fighting for existential threats. Like that's just ridiculous at this point in time. Would it have been good in our past? Kind of, yeah, sure. That's what Shaka Zulu was about. Shaka Zulu posed an existential threat to a lot of his fucking neighbors. And some of them did create, empires in response, in order to protect themselves from Shaka Zulu. And Shaka Zulu was able to, with the Zulu, fight off the Europeans for a good amount of times. So yeah, honestly, steel sharpens steel, right? But as far as what is actionable today in 2023, not in some other fucking calendar that you don't even go by, right? Like what are you really talking about? What's real, right? No, you're like, this is just nonsense. It's just a hypothetical that's not going to take place. But if we're serious about African liberation, let's just get serious. You know what I mean? And let's not let's just get serious. And instead, you got the peanut gallery who are like, but I heard that you had sex. Yes. You know what I'm saying? I'm in my fucking 30s. And it's like, it's weird that I have to explain that. It's weird that a man in his 30s has to, like a single man has to explain that he had sex, but like, yeah, I think when we're talking about realism, like that's what it has to be.
Thank you for that, Oni. I think Tanzan is back. Tanzan, were you able to follow along with the conversation?
Yes, bits of it. Um, I don't know if we can, the topic of a unified Africa. I don't really think that unification is necessarily the goal. I think it's just cooperation, because we are too diverse, too different, we do things too differently to imagine like a unified. There's isn't a unified Europe. There's just different states working together. So I think that our model can be towards shared interest, whether it's regional or cultural and all that, and we can do that. We can have exchanges between cultures and economics and employers and so on. But in terms of unifying, no, I don't see us as under one government, African government. That I don't see that working well at all. But the other thing is that we didn't really have I don't know if we had a concept of a nation state. Maybe in the West, they had those big empires, but in the East, we didn't really have big nation state. We had small autonomous tribes, and people, had big tribes that, are related to each other, but people were not, of this concept of a nation and a state that has borders and so on. People were constantly, they would settle. Sometimes they would migrate. Sometimes they would mix. Sometimes they would, so the concept of nation as predefined and unchangeable borders with passports and all that, I don't think we had that. So short of overhauling the whole system and going back to tribal boundaries, which obviously it can't work right now, I think the best thing is that is regional cooperation and working together and exchanging both goods and people. That would be my model, and also letting people be able to cross boundaries with ease, taking away some of these obstacles that prevent it's hard to travel within African countries. The plane transportation is very expensive, and you tend to use these terrible planes, and then the ground transportation is very slow. So that inhibits people from seeking opportunities elsewhere. But that would be a great thing to start. Not so much the European model of a federation. I think let's start with what we have in common first, and then work towards the larger goal. So yeah.
Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
that, Tanzan. In the chat, Lero says that's why if you aren't organized, your ideology, opinion, or anything doesn't matter. You're never gonna quote unquote unite the masses, and census isn't needed. Uh, with that said, I think Real Black Gentleman has returned. Real Black Gentleman, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think part of it, I think, is an economic thing. I mean, black people have to have black money. You know what I'm saying? There has to be the black currency. I mean, the word currency in and of itself, you know what I'm saying? What you keep current, you know what I'm saying? That sense of our current, what we currently use to trade amongst ourselves. That's what black people honestly need. And I think that if black people could, when we talk about a lot of this multipolarity and all this BRICS and stuff, black people need its own dollar. It needs its own script. It needs its own, its own black. It needs its own black gold piece. It needs its own black gold piece. That black people trade and share value with it exclusively, and it has to be. And it's almost like it has to be an exclusive kind of a thing where black people, you know what I'm saying, it's the most reasonable thing that you can do, because politically, apparently, you know what I'm saying, black people's policies are you know what I'm saying, is cut from all kinds of different cloths. So I mean, politically we're not, but economically, oh yeah, people have value about things. People might not believe in the same things from one side to the other, but that dollar, that new toy, yeah, there's trade going on. And so, like, Africa is developing, you know what I'm saying? It's there. I wish the policy, but I mean, there's so many, you know what I'm saying, cats in that corral. I mean, it's not impossible. And I don't mean to be all pessimistic. It's not impossible. It's just, you gotta, find that medium, find that mode, find that realm of where where you get the majority, and everything that's beyond the pale, you can set that to the side and worry about that later. I think honestly, you get the money straight, and everything else, you know what I'm saying, everything else will fall into place. I mean, otherwise, you know what I'm saying, get the French out, you know what I'm saying, get that French, you know what I'm saying, CFA out of West Africa, in Central Africa, get that CFA out for starters. Get that out, and then work on like some economics and, understanding a sense of value, and don't be, don't try to hog up, economic or political space. I'm a yield.
I appreciate that. RBG. Is there anyone who has any last words for this prompt? So what I'll do, I'm going to drop Shoot the Breeze topic number 6, but I'll do a quick station ID break, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Before that, Lero says we are up against economic blocks, multinational military organizations, like we're not thinking big enough and very adolescent. That's why we skip over organization and just straight to talks of unity. That's a good point, Lero. I like that, actually. I like that. Trigger Happy also had some comments, and I put them on the screen. But you guys could go through the comments and check it out. Shout out to Afro Native World. He's in the chat. Shout out to all of you guys who are in the chat, making the chat lively. Shoot the Breeze topic number 6 is going to be why we can't teach these languages in any public schools in the diaspora. So that's going to be Shoot the Breeze topic number 6. We'll do a quick station ID break. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back.